In today's project, we're going to build a to-do list, but this is not any to-do list, it's a special to-do list because we're going to build it 3 times. First, we're going to build it using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Now, this is going to be in this video. Then we're going to build it using Bootstrap, and then we're going to build it using Tailwind. So HTML, Tailwind, JavaScript, HTML, Bootstrap, JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. For the to-do list itself, it's going to have alerts when we're going to add items. Then we add new one, new to-do. Then it's going to have alerts when we complete and also have effects on the completed elements. We can also edit elements and we can also delete elements from the list. I'm going to delete this little fellow. We can also delete the entire list, but we don't want to do that just now. And also the lists will share elements between them. So if I hit a refresh here, I'm going to have exactly the same to-dos. So hope you're excited. If you are, give this video a thumbs up. It also helps the channel. And also subscribe to the channel if you want to see more projects like this. So with this being said, let's get started with the project. So our very first project will be to create this to-do list using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. For this, I just created an empty folder. I'm going to start with the HTML, so index.html. I'm going to start here boilerplate, then add the CSS file. I'm going to link a style.css. Don't have yet, so let's create it. And also a main.js file, and also link this one up. Going to the body, script, source, and main.js. This a title, to do, list. And now let's create the structure of the list in HTML. So let's get started using creating a main div, giving it the class of container. This will obviously contain the entire to-do list. The next 3 elements will be, well, first of all, in a header, we're going to have a class of feedback and alert. This is where, of course, our alerts will live. Let's just type in here, write value for item name. Okay, and now let's also open this up using live server. So right click, open it with live server. I'm going to close up here the Bootstrap and the Tailwind one, and also I'm just going to leave these 2 opened. Next, after our header, we're going to have a form with the ID of item form, take out the action, and then we're just going to have a div with the class of item-container. Now let's work on our form. Our form consists, if we take a look at our finished project, of a title, a input, and a button. So let's go into the form, create an h3 with the text of to-do list. After the h3, we're going to create a div with the class of input group, which is going to contain our input tag and our button. Let's create an input tag with the ID of item input, and of course a placeholder of name, and just 3 dots. After input tag, we're going to have our button. The button is going to have an ID of add-item and a class of btn. Now the type of this button will be submit, which is going to then trigger our form and submit whatever is in the input tag. And for the text, we're just going to type in add item. We're done with our form, so I'm going to just minimize it. And now let's move into the items container. First, we're going to create this div for the item list, item-list. And for now, I'm going to hard code in here one item. This one item will have the class of item. It will then include a div of item-info, which is then going to contain a h6 with the class of item-index plus a paragraph tag with the class of item-name. Now, again, this is just going to be hard coded in because this is going to be generated using JavaScript. So we're going to type in here a 1 for item index and a item 1 for the item name. After our items, we're going to create another div for the icons. So class of item-icons, and include here 3 icons. One will be a I-tag with the class of FAR. These are going to be font awesome icons. We're going to include the CDN just in a couple of minutes. So FAR.fa-check-circle and dot completed-item. I'm going to hit save now. For now, enter and save. Now for you to see, this will be the very first icon. And in order to also see the icons, I'm going to go ahead now and search for the CDN from Font Awesome. So Font Awesome CDN. And you should land on this little page. From here, just copy the link and include it in your header after the style.css tag. Go back here and you should see a check mark. Next, we're going to go to our icons and copy this, paste it down here. Now we're going to replace the FA circle with edit and check also, edit, FA edit, and replace the completed with edit. icon, these two classes. Now for the delete icon, I'm going to copy this again, type in FA instead of edit, dash times, and dash circle. And now instead of edit item, we're going to have delete item. Okay, so you're going to see these little items. 3 icons with check, edit, and delete. Perfect. And that's pretty much it for our HTML. Almost. The last thing that we need to add is a button. So before, not the last, not the second last, but up here, we're going to add, so basically where your container ends, we're going to add a button tag with the type of button, then with the ID of clear-list and the class of btn. And also include here, in curly brackets, clear items. There we go. There's our last button. Okay, that's it for HTML. Now we can move on to CSS. Open up your CSS file, and first we're going to do a general reset. So star, margin 0, we're going to reset all of the margins, padding 0, reset all of the paddings, box sizing, border box. Now we're going to take the body and add the font family of Poppins to be with 2 P's. This is going to be a string, and after that a comma and sans serif. Perfect. That's going to take all ULs, unordered lists, list icons, list elements, and anchor tags, and change their text decoration to none, their list style to none, and also the color will be inherit. Last but not least, we're going to create a variable. So let's grab onto the root selector and add here a dash dash green and give this the value of hash 37PA67. So this is going to be the main green color that you see right here for the buttons, for the underlines, for the check mark, for the borders, for everything. That's pretty much it for a general style. Now let's move on to the container. So let's select the container class. Remember, this is the container that's wrapping around everything. We're going to set to this a max width of 900 pixels. Of course, you can go larger, smaller, depends on your preferences. Let's add a margin now. We're going to add a margin all over. So we're going to add top and bottom 0 and left and right auto. Then we're going to add some padding of 0 top and bottom and 0.25 left and right. We're going to display as flex, change the flex direction into a flex column because out of the box, flex is displayed in a row direction. Now we're going to align items to the center and add a margin to the top of 3 rem, meaning 3 times the base pixel size, which is going to be 16 on Google Chrome and on most of the web browsers. Next, let's take care of our feedback right here. So let's select the class of feedback. Now I'm going to add to the feedback, as you can see in the finished project here, the max width of its container. So let's add here a width of 100%. You can see the feedback, so I'm just going to add here background color of our second variable, which will be the red color. So let's type in here red, and I'm going to paste in here the hexadecimal color 721C24, which is going to be the main red color. We're also going to have a pink, which is going to be a hexadecimal number of F8D7DA. So let's give this a bar of pink for now, just so we can see it. Next, we're going to display as flex in order to align everything in the center of the page again. Then flex direction column and align items, of course, center again. Now, as you can remember, we have here a alert class. So I'm going to select now, I'm going to use nesting in CSS. Basically, you can take classes that are within an element or a main class or IDs or just elements and nest them in the main class. This is the parent selector. We're going to use the parent selector, which is feedback, and dot alert, because alert, go back to our header, is in the same class as the header. So feedback and alert. If feedback is the parent element, then alert is immediate neighbor. So for the parent element, feedback and alert will be the same thing. Now the alert class can now have a padding of 0.75 rem, then a border radius of 0.25 rem, making it round on the edges. Let's add a margin from the bottom or to the bottom of 1 rem. And let's increase the font width to 600. Now, depending on what type of alert it will be, we're going to change the display color. So if we're going to have a danger or red alert, then this should be pink with the background color and red with the main color. So I'm just going to add here next a second class of dot red, and then we're going to just add here background color of var and the pink color. Then the main color will be a red color, so var red, and the border will be 1 pixel solid and var and red again. So if I would move these up here, I'm going to delete them afterwards, it should be looking something like this at the end. Okay, I'm going to now pick out everything, and actually for the background color, I'm just going to leave this as transparent. Okay, and delete these two. So remember, it does have a background color, but it will depend on what the color is. Now let's move on, copy this, and change the class to green. Also going to move up in our variables, and going to copy the green color once, the green variable, and add here a light green. And we're going to add to this a hexadecimal color of D4, E, DD, and A. Now go back to the green class and change this to the background color should be light green, the color should be green, and once again down here green. Okay, now for our button. We have a .btn class. Scroll up a bit, and we're going to do a bit of general styling for this. So first of all, background, we're going to leave it as transparent. Color, we're going to change this to var and green. We're going to take up the borders, first of all by adding just a border, 1 pixel, solid, and the green color, so var green. Increase the padding, first we're going to go with left and right 0.5 rem, and top and bottom 1 rem. Actually, top and bottom 0.5 and left and right 1 rem. Then we're going to increase the font size to 1 rem. The font weight, we're going to go with 600. Let's give it a border radius of 0.25 rem. Cursor pointer, because this is a button, so each time we're going to hover over it, cursor should look something like this. Let's add a transition, all, meaning, for example, I'm going to add a hover effect just in a couple of seconds. It's going to hover in and hover out, 0.2 seconds, and a ease in out effect. Now let's going to add a box shadow of 0, 2 pixels, 4 pixels, and a RGBA of 0, 0, 0, and 0.2. Okay, there's our little shadow. Now, if I'm going to hover over the button, so let's select the parent class and Python hover, then I'm just going to take out the background color, which is transparent, and add now a green color and change the color of the text to white. It will be looking something like this. Now let's work on our input form. Next class, input form. Actually, this is an ID, not a class. First, I'm going to add to this again the width of the entire container, so 100%. We're going to add a bit of a margin top and bottom of free rem and left and right auto. And this should be input form, but item form. Sorry about that. There we go. Now let's work on this little title. By using nesting, parent selector, space, h3, we're going to change the font size, 2 rem, 3. And we're going to change the text decoration, or text transform to capitalize, meaning that each letter will be capitalized at the start of each word. Now let's move on to the input group. So dot input group, we're going to display it as flex, add a gap of 1 rem between the input and the item. We're going to justify the content with space between, align the items to the center, and add a margin to the bottom of 1 rem. Now to the input. Remain within the input group, parent selector, and select the input tag. Let's give this the width of 100%. Because this would result in a deformed button, we're going to reduce this to 80%. Now for the input itself, let's do a couple of changes. For example, padding all around, we're going to do a 0.5 rem. Let's add some border of 1 pixel solid and the var of green. Now let's go ahead and add some border radius of 0.25 rem. We're going to increase the font size to 1 rem and add a text transform of capitalized. Perfect. Now to the item container. So next class, item dash container. As you can see, the item container consists of the list of each individual item, of the info, which has the index and the name, and then of the item icons. So let's treat each of them individually. Within our item container, first of all, we're going to add to this a width of 100%. We're going to align the text to center. Now we're going to grab onto the item and list within the item container, add a margin to the bottom of 2 rem, pushing that clear button down. Within the item list, we have individual items. Each of them has a class of item. We're going to add a padding of 0.5 rem to each individual item. Then we're going to display everything that is in the item as flex, leave them in the row direction, justify the content as space between, align the items to the center. let's add a border to the bottom of each and every item. So border and bottom, 1 pixel solid and var green. And each item then should have a margin to the bottom of 0.25 rem. It seems that the icons are not aligned because the item icons should be, select them and move them using Option or on a Mac and arrow up, or Alt on a PC and arrow up, and move them into the item themselves. Happen now. Okay, let's move on to the item info. So within our item class, we're going to have an item-info, which has our index and our item names. So first of all, we're going to display as flex. We're going to add a gap, 1 rem. We're going to align the item center. Now let's grab them to the the item index. Add a border of 1 pixel solid and var green, a border radius of 0.5 rem, of course a padding of 0.5 rem. Now in our finished project, if we click on complete one of the items, you can see that the border and the number within the item turn to gray. Also, we're going to take care of the name, which also turns gray and has a line through. To achieve this using JavaScript, but the classes will be actually in here in our CSS. So remain within the item index, parent selector, and if it has a .completed class to it, then we're going to change the color to hash A8, AAA, and D. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing for the border. Copy this border, paste it in here, but we're going to have here, instead of the var of green, a gray color. Now for the item name, let's move outside of item index dot item dash name. You're just going to have a text transform of capitalized, and then again parent selector. And if this one is completed, it has the class of completed, then we're going to text decoration and line through. Also, we're going to change the color to hex, copy the gray color from here. Okay, it will look something like this. For example, if I'm just going to take this completed class and add it to one of our items, let's say item index also has the class of completed. You see it's grayed out, and the name, if this one has the class of completed, is going to be grayed out and line through. Okay, so just Control Z here and move back to our style. Last thing that we need to take care of are the item icons. So let's see, we are outside. We need to move outside of the info. Info ended with that yellow curly brackets, for me at least. So I'm going to take here the item.icons and style them. So display, flex, let's add a gap of 1 rem, spread them out a bit. Cursor pointer, you need to have the possibility for each item to have a pointer effect to them. Now, actually, this should be added to a fa dot or a .fa class in order to have this on a individual scale. So move the cursor pointer into the fa. Actually, wait, it's FAR. Yeah, so FAR. Sorry about that. Each icon should now have a cursor pointer, but between them you can see the cursor changes again. If I add a cursor pointer to item icons, then it's going to be pointer all over the place. I don't want that. Now for those two classes, that will be the checkbox and the delete item. So fa-check-circle, we're going to change the color here, bar, and add the green color. Then for the fa times, I'm going to copy this and replace check with time, yes, and change this to the FA red color. Perfect. Now we are done with our CSS. Next up is to move to JavaScript. So let's open up a JavaScript file. First things first, let's grab onto our variables. So const form is going to be document.querySelector. We're going to select the ID of item form. Oh, by the way, if you don't end this with semicolon and just add a comma, then you could type in the next one, the item input, and don't have to type in const. Then assign this to the document dot selector and select the next ID, which is input, which is item input. Okay, so just to demonstrate this, let's do here console log. We're going to take form, comma, input, item input. Okay, inspect, right click, inspect on your browser, and you should see form and input. So both of them are selected. Okay, so you don't have to type in const each and every time. If you're just adding commas, then JavaScript will know, okay, these are variables defined by the variable name of const. Okay, let's move on, add the next one, which is going to be the item list. So comma again, after our input of the item input, going to have an item list. Add this to the document model. Create selector, grab on to the class of dot item dash list. Wait, why am I typing an N? Okay, comma, feedback. Again, document dot create selector dot the class of feedback. Then comma again, the add button. So add btn document create selector. Oh, we don't need this apply here. What am I doing? And dot, not dot, but select the ID of add dash item. Move outside, and we're also going to have a clear btn, which is going to be document create selector and select the ID of clear dash list. Okay, we got all of our variables. Now let's just initiate here a let with the to-do list and assign it to an empty array. So first things first, we need to get the list. So let's type in here to-do get list. This will be triggering then a handle item. So next to do handle item. This will then trigger a next to do, which will be to add the item to the list and also to local storage. So then we're going to do save and load to local storage. We also need some feedback to do get feedback and feedback actually. And then we need to clear all items. Okay, so let's get started with the get list. We're going to create here const. We're going to create a arrow function. So get list will be assigned now to a function, and it's going to take in as a parameter a to-do items. Okay, now the items list dot inner HTML will be first of all reset. So we're going to have here absolutely nothing. Then we're going to take our to-do items that are going to be brought in here into the function, loop over them using a for each method, and for each item and index, we're going to take the item list and insert adjacent HTML. Is going to take in two variables. One will be the position, which will be before end, then comma, and between backticks, we're now going to add here our HTML that we have in here. So from your item, you're going to take this, copy it, comment it out, then your item will disappear, and add it in here. Now, instead of this one, you're going to replace it with $ curly bracket and add here the index. And instead of the item 1, you're going to replace this again, $ curly brackets and the item itself. Now, when we're going to add an item, we're going to add it to the list. This is the code that's going to be inserted, this HTML code. Now, at the end, so right after this parenthesis, at the end, we're going to handle here the item. And the item will accept here, the function will accept here an item. Now we don't have this function, so this is the next one that we're going to create here. Again, const handle item, assign it to a function. This is going to take in as an argument the item name, open close curly brackets. Let's create a const with item, which will be from the item list dot create selector all. We're going to select all of the newly created items. So item. And actually this should be items. What am I doing here? Item, const items. Now we're going to loop over these items again using a for each loop. So items dot for each item, going to return a item. And then now this is very important. We're going to check if the item returned has the same name as the item name that is going to be added here in this function. So if the item that's returning out of this for each loop dot query selector, we're going to select from the item. Remember, we have access to the name, so open and close parenthesis and dot class of item dash name. Now this is very important. You need to also take its text content, then trim it using the trim method, and then dot to lowercase in order to compare it, open close parenthesis, to the same type and value of the item name dot trim. So no white spaces and also to lowercase, close parenthesis. Okay, now if this is true, then we're going to add here free event listeners. So to do, we're going to add a complete add event, copy this 2 more times, a edit event and a delete event. So let's start with the complete event, completed. So we're going to take that item dot query selector, we're going to select the class of dot completed or dot complete item. To this, we're going to dot add event listener. We're going to add an event of click, then comma function, and just to be clear, this complete item is go up here, right here. Okay, so the first checkmark that you saw here, the icon with the checkmark, also has the class of complete item. So we're going to search for this class, and if on this class somebody clicks and that class is within an item that has the same name as the one that was clicked on, it's a bit complicated, but that's the way it works. Then we're going to trigger this event listener that is going to do the following thing. First, we're going to create here let item index. Actually, let's start with the text. So now let's start with the index. Index is going to be equal to item dot query selector. We're going to select the item class of item dash index. And I'm going to copy this and change the index to name and also here name. So we need these two values in order to change them. We're going to change the item index by using the class list dot toggle. And remember when we added the class of completed to it, well, now we're going to toggle it, so completed. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing for the index for the item name. So once again, each time we're going to click, we don't have the item right now, each time we're going to click on those icons, we're going to toggle on the name and on the index these two classes for this class. Now I'm not going to do the edit and delete event. First, let's add actually a item. So let's go down here, add item to the list. Let's go ahead, grab onto our form dot add event listener. We're going to listen to a submit event, and when this event is triggered, we're going to function. This function is going to accept as an argument the event itself, because we now need to e.prevent default behavior. So quickly, now if I click on this add button, nothing happens, but if I comment this prevent default, it's going to refresh the page. It's going to submit everything that's in there. So we don't want to do this. Now, next we're going to const create a variable item name again and assign it to the input item and to the item input dot value. Now we're going to take this value and have a condition. First of all, if the item name dot length is equal to 0. So basically, if there's nothing in here or the name is not long enough, then we should send the user some kind of feedback. So we're going to create down here a function of function send feedback, which is going to accept a text as an argument and a class name. The class name will be added to the feedback class. So feedback class list dot add. I'm going to add here using backticks and $sign, so the variable of class name. Now the text will be also added to the feedback dot inner HTML. Will be equal to the text. Now in order to make this also disappear, first, you know what, let's add it. Let's add here. So if this is true, then send feedback. We're going to pass in here first argument, which is the text, which is please enter valid value, and the class will be red string. Yes, let's try this out. I'm going to click on the add button, and we're going to have this alert of please enter valid value. Now this should disappear. You can see here after 3 seconds, this disappears. So we need to add to our feedback down here in the function a set timeout, which is then going to feedback. So copy this feedback dot remove now the class, and also set the text back to its initial value, which was right value for item name. Okay, and also this should take only 3 seconds, so 3000 milliseconds. Okay, let's try this out again. Feedback, something went wrong. Okay, and now if I click on add item, this should disappear after 3 seconds. Or you can make it 2.5 seconds if you wish. I'm just going to leave it at 3. So next up, we want to also give the logic if the submission is successful. So else, we're going to take the to-do list and then the to-do items and dot push the item name the list. After that, we should also save to local storage. So set local storage the to-do items and then get the list, which will then pass in the to-do items again into the list. And because we're successful, we should now send a feedback of, first of all, the text with item added to the list, and then have a green successor feedback. So we can do, first of all, a failure, and then to do edit. And this is most likely stopping because if we inspect here, we do not have, oh, sorry about that. This should be to do items, up, items. Okay, so let's try this once again. First item, click add, and set local storage not defined. I was expecting that. So let's go here, save and load from local storage. Leave this open. So we're going to const set local storage. I'm going to assign this to a function, which is going to accept the to-do items. Then go ahead, go to local storage dot set item. We're going to set here a to-do items, then comma, that's the name, is going to be in the list, JSON dot stringify, and we're going to send in here the to-do items. Okay, so this should be now setting it. Hit here, first item, hit enter, and there we go. Our first item is now in here. Also, if you click now on check, this should check our item. So both of these functionalities are working. Now let's also load, because if I refresh here, it's going to disappear. Let's also load from local storage. For this, we're going to go down here, const, and get local storage function, and pass in here pretty nothing for now. But we're going to create here const with to do storage, assign it to local storage. Now we're going to get items for local storage. So get items. What are we looking for? That list that we created. So to do items. And then we're going to check if the to do storage is undefined, equal to the string of undefined, or the to do storage is null. Then we're going to do items. We're going to set it to an empty string. But else, we're going to get the to do items and assign them to JSON.parse. We're going to getting now the items, and we're going to parse in here or put in here the to do storage. Okay, and also we're going to set the list now. So get list, and we're going to pass in here the to do items. Simple as that. So next time I'm going to add second item, edit, now reload. Oh, I also have to initiate the function. So just initiate it down here. Okay, there we go. There's the item. Even if I reload, the item will still be there. Also, let's check it. But if I reload, it's going to appear now unchecked. Okay, now we can add items. Now let's edit, delete, and clear the list. So let's go back to our list up here. And we're going to go now to edit. Again, we're going to take the item.querySelector. And next we're going to select the class of .edit item. Add the event listener to it. Now, you can also add just onClick. Assign this to an arrow function. It's basically going to do the same thing. And now first things first, when we're editing something, I want this button to change instead of add to edit item, because when we're editing something, it's going to appear here. So first we're going to change the add button, add btn, we already have it selected. In our HTML, we're going to change this to edit item. Now, if you want to change it back, then upon submitting an item, so we're down here, after submitting an item, if it's successful, then we're going to change it to add item. You're going to see just in a couple of seconds the effect of this. Now let's move back to edit. Next, we're going to take the item input dot value, and we're going to assign it to the item name. Then we're going to go to the item list and remove the child that is the item. Now we're going to take our to do items, our array, and assign it to the to do items again. But we're going to use the filter method to filter through them and use the item or bring back the items. So return the item that is not the same as the item name. Okay, and now we can again save it to set local storage to do items. Okay, so let's try this out. So second item, I'm going to change this to first item. Hit enter. Also, you saw the button changing there. Edit. And basically, if I refresh, this is going to stay as first item. Also, take a look in inspect, application, and you should see in your local storage. There we go. Item introduce. You should see first item. Okay, these are different projects right here. Okay, now we have this done. Let's add here a second item. Enter. Item was added. Now let's try and delete them. So we can also check them. This is working. We can edit them. This is working. But now we need to delete them. So let's go down here to delete. Now I'm going to copy this part, paste it in here. I'm going to search for delete item. And now let's see. First of all, we're going to check if we really want to delete this. So if confirm, and this is going to return a boolean. So let's pass in here, are you sure you want to delete this item? So if this returns true, then the item list dot remove child, and we're going to remove the item that's going to be passed in here. So the item that we're targeting. Curly bracket is not, shouldn't be there, shouldn't be there. We need to move out of here. So there we go. So if we're going to activate here confirm windows.confirm, and this will be confirmed. So now if I click on this, get this confirmation. If I click on OK, it should delete it. I'm going to click on cancel for now. And let's continue here with updating then the list. So to do items will be then equal to the to do items. And we need to use our filter method on it, because it's one thing to delete them, but it's another thing to actually see them in the UI. So arrow function, search for that item that is going to be triggered. And again, just as we have it up there, return, or if you're not using curly brackets, then you can just item that is not the same as the item name. Okay. Now this process needs to be saved to local storage. So not only deleting it from the UI, but also set local storage. We're going to set it to do items. And we're also going to send the feedback, first with the text of item deleted. And then we're going to pass in here the type of red. So let's try this out. Let's cancel. Okay, this is working. Now let's hit OK. Okay, the item was deleted. The alert is up here, going to disappear. And also if I refresh the page, it's not going to appear anymore. Now last but not least, we have your clear items. So let's add a couple of items. So let's say like this video. By the way, we also need to do one last thing, and that is in our event listener down here, when we're done with everything, item input, we should assign its value now to an empty string. So if we add a subscribe, then it should disappear here. Okay. So last but not least, let's clear the items. Go down here, clear our items. And it's pretty simple. We're just going to grab onto the clear button and dot on click our function. First, we're going to ask for a confirm. So confirm. And we're going to type in here, are you sure you want to delete all items? And if it clicks on yes, then double ampersand, we're going to do items. We're going to assign this an empty array again. Then we're going to go into local storage dot clear, and then comma again, get list, and we're going to pass in here the new to do items. Okay, simple as that. So let's try it out. Click on this, cancel it, click on OK now, and the list is clear. Also, if you refresh, you shouldn't see anything. This is the very, very short version of how you can do this. Okay, so that's it for now for this project. Next up, we're going to do the Bootstrap one, and then we're going to do the Tailwind CSS one. And you're going to see by simply having exactly the same JavaScript, how you can trigger either a Tailwind, a Bootstrap, or a regular CSS project. So stay tuned, stay subscribed, like this video. Happy coding, catch you next time. Bye-bye.